In this lecture, we'll be exploring the file structure of the project that we created in the previous lecture. Over here, you can see there's a file called startup.cs. Now, this is responsible for setting up the pipeline of the project, and here you'll find implementation of a dependency injection pattern. The first thing that it does is over here, if you notice, configure services. So if you're running it in production version, it will be creating a directory inside this client app folder, and everything will be published inside the build directory. If it is being served from the debug environment or development environment, in that case, client app directory will be used for serving the files. Now here you can see that if it is a development environment, we are making use of developer exception pages. Otherwise, in production, we'll be showing error pages. Here we have made use of HTTPS redirection, use of static files, and single page application static files. This is the default route that we have defined, and this is the directory which hosts the single page application. Now, program.cs is the entry point. So here you'll notice this main method gets called, and when it is being called, you can see it is calling internally create web host builder method, and create host builder method has got this create default builder, which is internally using the startup class that we just explored. Apart from that, you'll also find static pages and files like app settings.json. So here you'll have all the settings related to the web application or single page application. Configuration settings, we have pages over here. So this one is the partial control view imports. Then we have error.cs HTML and CS page. Apart from that, we also have a controller, which is sample data controller. So this is the API controller, which is currently being used to demonstrate fetching data from the server. And as mentioned, this is the client app directory, which has got all these files. So here we have components, counter, fetch data, home.js, layout, nav menu, app.js, and this is the scss file, and this is the public directory, which has got the assets like favicon.ico file, index.html. Let's open it up, and here you can see this is the template index.html file. Now if I run this one in browser, this is what you get to see. Let's go ahead inside the elements tab, and here you'll notice the page that is being generated. And if I show you the index.html page, these are the comments that you can see now coming up when the site is running. Here we have the styles coming up, and similarly the body tag, and then the div id root. So this root as well is defined over here, and every content that you see inside this div root is being generated and inserted over here. So this is the div now, nav bar and div. Now some of the contents that you see is coming from this file called app.js and index.js. So let's open up app.js, and as you can see, it is returning a layout, and layout has got three routes over here. First is the home, then counter, then fetch data. And internally, you can see we are taking the root element, and then we are rendering this root element. Internally, once the root element is rendered, it is going to call this, and it is further going to display these pages. So we have home, counter, and fetch data. When we say home, this is the file which gets called, home.js, which is going to return this particular div, and that is what we are currently seeing when we are running this application, as you can see over here. Now if I go and click on fetch data, let me take you to the network tab, and here if I click on fetch data, you'll see this method gets called sample data weather forecasts, and this one is defined inside this controller that we're talking about, sample data controller weather forecast, and this is what it is returning right now over here. Similarly, if I click on this counter, you can see it's just loading the view. There's no server-side request, and here this is the file that gets called counter.js, and you can see that once we are clicking on this button, onClick event is being called, the increment count method is called, and then it is setting the state of this variable current count by incrementing it to 1 every time. And here you can check it out. So that was a quick explanation about the file structure of the single page application that we created using ASP.NET Core and React library.